Hello, and welcome to The Sun. My name is Tom Zuper. I'm managing editor, and we're here today with Leland Cheung, Cambridge City Councilor and candidate for Lieutenant Governor, one of our continuing series of interviews with the candidates for statewide office this year. So, Leland, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Why don't we start by you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got into the race.
All right, so you want the long version, the short version, or?
Give us the short version. Yeah.
I was at a debate or a forum a few weeks ago, and they asked, "Why are you in politics in the first place?" And my answer was the psychological tricks your parents play on you as kids. So my father actually immigrated to Massachusetts in 1969. He was living in Harvard Square, putting himself through school at Boston University at a time when you could still do that. And walking through the square each day, the activism he saw on the streets was unlike anything he'd ever seen before, and was determined to instill in my sister and I an appreciation for not just how lucky we were that he moved here, but for the freedom and opportunity that America offers. So,
Where did he move here from?
China.
China.
Yeah. So, I was about to get there. I was going to say, so every few years he took the family back to China to visit relatives still living there, and that's where I learned that much of the world does not get to enjoy the same kind of freedom that we so often take for granted. So I was always the rebel rouser kid who was like pointing at the picture of Mao on the mantle and saying, "Wasn't that a bad idea? Cultural Revolution, Tiananmen Square," and being told, "Oh, you can't talk about that." And that's where I learned, frankly, that my cousins can't run for office because they think they have something different to offer. They can't write an op-ed criticizing a government decision without risking reprisal on themselves or their family or worse. They can't do what we've been doing and what I've been doing for the last, since I got into this race in February, which is going and meeting with voters one-on-one and in groups and letting them ask questions of me and what I do as Lieutenant Governor. And so my parents not only pushed me to recognize the importance of civic participation, they also pushed me to study and work hard, and it wasn't always fun, frankly, having a tiger mother and a dragon dad. But they got me through school at Stanford and later Harvard and MIT, where I did my MBA and Master's in Public Policy. And all led to opportunities investing in venture, and was working in venture capital in Kendall Square, investing in companies from clean tech to mobile to internet infrastructure. But in 2009, the psychological tricks my parents had played on me as a kid were tugging at me, and I wanted to be giving back in more than just the volunteer capacity that I had been. So I was actually going to volunteer on a campaign. And decided to run for myself because no one was talking about what I thought was most important in Cambridge at the time, which was namely that I was working in this innovation economy in Kendall Square, and people were talking about, oh, how great it is for the tax base and the jobs we were attracting for the companies we were bringing in, but no one was talking about how to make sure that it's benefiting the entire community. No one was talking about the kids that lived in public housing literally 2 blocks away from Microsoft and Google, but weren't getting the education or training they needed to one day work there. No one's talking about the business owners, the entrepreneurs who lived in the rest of the city that weren't getting the same kind of access to financing or support or mentorship, regardless if they had an MIT PhD or a GED or a cheer degree. So I ran for the council. Over the last 5 years on the council, I've earned a reputation as one of the most progressive, productive, responsive members of the council. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with union members fighting for fair wages from some of our largest employers. I've fought to improve education, universal pre-K, after-school STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, education, making sure that the 30% of our kids who live in public housing but don't have access to the internet at home get it, and they will be through a new partnership with the Housing Alliance. And I've been a bridge builder. I realized early on that the problems that we were facing in Cambridge couldn't be solved by Cambridge alone. I had the first ever in the history of Cambridge and Boston joint meeting between the Cambridge and Boston City Councils. It was mind-blowing that was even possible. But it was all to try and find some joint solutions to our shared challenges. And I think to get to your question about what differentiates me, I'm the only candidate in the race for Lieutenant Governor who's currently elected. I'm the only person with 5 years of experience at the local level under my belt as a Cambridge City Councilor. And no matter what people's top issues are, whether it's running of the city administration, Chapter 70, Chapter 90 funding for seniors to age in place, divestment, I not only have talking points, I have a track record that you can look up, you can point to, and be confident that day one I'll be fighting for your issue. Also, I think the second part of that story, second reason I got into this race, is 3 years ago I wrote an op-ed criticizing the governor and the Secretary of Bielecki over a policy that I thought was pitting cities against each other instead of encouraging us to work together. The governor's reprisal to me, unlike what it would have been to my cousins, was to appoint me to the board of our state's economic development agency. And
If you're so smart, you fix it, right? Right.
and through that, I've gotten the opportunity to travel around the entire Commonwealth. We've been on investments in, the Merrimack Valley with mentorship programs. In the Lowell Plastics Engineering Institute, in Holyoke with the High Performance Green Computing Center. You name it. We've been investing across the state in places and people that have too often been left behind. And I've realized that the same issues I've been trying to tackle in Cambridge are the same challenges and opportunity we face as a Commonwealth as a whole today. And I'll give you one, there's one story I like to give that I think illustrates the point. So one of the projects the board has been working on is this thing called mass broadband, or Broadband 123, or Open Cape, all fall under the same umbrella. But basically we've been stringing fiber all along western Massachusetts, all on the Cape, in places that previously only had access to dial-up. And when we lit the network, about a year ago, we were in Otis at a school, and it wasn't your typical ribbon cutting with the big scissors and the governor. He literally went and flicked a switch, and then all of a sudden, we were on a video conference between these kids in Otis, some kids in South America, and NASA. Literally impossible the day before. And as you saw those kids, eyes widen up, and then you try to use their new language skills, they realize that's why we need to double down on the investments that Deval Patrick has led in infrastructure, education, job creation throughout the state.
Leland, what was the government program that you criticized that led to the appointment?
So it was a program that was giving tax breaks to companies. And so basically, if you look it up, it's Vertex. And Vertex essentially was moved, they moved from Cambridge to Boston. They were given some subsidies from the state. And as a Cambridge taxpayer, I thought, why am I paying to move a company literally less than a mile away? The people that working there were going two more stops on the red line, or 2 more stops on the T. We weren't bringing any net new jobs in. We weren't growing, wasn't helping the region as a whole, and was thinking about, it was fostering this competition between Cambridge and Boston, which I think is completely the wrong way to go. Every time we talk about the innovation economy, we're talking about Cambridge and Boston, or Cambridge versus Boston, or how we compare to Silicon Valley. If you put Silicon Valley, and I can do this for yourself, on top of Massachusetts, and you draw the square mileage, the shapes are a little bit different, but it would literally stretch from one end to the other. And it's fundamentally an issue of equity, because if you're a kid in Otis or a kid in public housing in Cambridge, if you can't go home at night and access Google or Wikipedia to do your homework, you can't compete with your classmates, let alone with kids halfway around the world. If we're only thinking about the innovation economy and growing job opportunities in Boston and Cambridge as opposed to the rest of the state and how we connect all of that expertise, if you're an entrepreneur in the rest of the state, you can't compete with the other entrepreneurs or with, again, the people halfway around the world.
That's a good point. Was that a company moving from Boston to Cambridge, or Cambridge?
Cambridge to Boston.
Cambridge to Boston.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think that's the other reason I'm in this race. I think we're at a tipping point where we're either going to double down on Deval's investments in education, infrastructure, expanding the innovation economy, or we're going to go backwards with Baker. And as the only person in this race who has worked in the private sector in the innovation economy that everyone is talking about trying to expand, as the only person who actually has worked at the local level in a substantial way with 5 years on the city council, as the only person who's actually worked with Governor Patrick on expanding the innovation economy throughout the state, I think I'm the best person to partner with our next governor, he or she, to continue advancing that vision, but also to help, because of that, to help us win in November.
I just want to back up for a minute. So you have an undergraduate degree from Harvard.
From Stanford.
Oh, from Stanford.
Yes.
Okay. And then you have a graduate degree from MIT, the Sloan School of
Yes.
Medicine.
Yep.
Okay. Those are two pretty heady degrees.
And I have another.
If I own just one, I'd be happy. So the question is, why are you running for an office in state government, which is largely anonymous and that has been vacant for more than a year, and we've seen no clamoring for, well, man, you got to get that lieutenant governor's job filled. Murray's been gone for a year. So,
Yeah.
there seems to be a disconnect there. I mean, you're a very learned,
Yeah.
a very learned man. You're aggressive. You're well spoken. You got those degrees. Why lieutenant governor?
So 2 things. I think first of all, I've been entrepreneurial my entire career. from startups to venture capital. And the idea of having, I should back up for a second. First of all, I think the Lieutenant Governor's office can be more than it has been.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why we've had problems with the governor's transportation bill, I was at the meeting at the Mass Municipal Association where I was meeting with mayors from across the state 2 to 3 months after he'd already announced it. Those meetings should have been happening. And the governor has a lot of things on their plate. They got to worry about everything from potholes on the turnpike to the issues that we're having with some of our agencies. They can't be doing the grassroots work that actually got Deval Patrick elected in the first place to build the support for these, I think, really bold proposals that would do a lot to invest in our Commonwealth. The Lieutenant Governor has the time and the ability to focus on those and do those meetings 2 to 3 months, not afterwards, but ahead of time. Building the support with your mayors, your city's councilors, your town meeting members, your selectmen, your school committee members, the people on the activists, to have them understand why these things are important, not just for the Commonwealth, but how they'll affect them directly, and building that support so that every senator and state rep has the confidence when it comes to the voting time to realize that they have a base of support that's going to back them up.
Just so you know, you're the second candidate now for Lieutenant Governor who've espoused that,
Yeah.
that platform of being a liaison between the corner office and state government
Yep.
with the local mayors, the city councilors, and
But I'm the only one that comes along with the credibility of having been on the city council for the last 5 years, and having been dealing with the issues that the Commonwealth has been dealing with over the last 5 years and the ramifications they've had on local governments, to have the credibility to go out and be an effective advocate. And to get back to your question originally as to why I decided to run for Lieutenant Governor, I'm not running because I see this as a stepping stone. I'm not running because I want to be in elected office and I saw this as my best opportunity. I'm already on the Cambridge City Council, which frankly is a pretty great job.
yeah, what Cambridge City Councils get paid how much?
$75,000.
You know what they get paid in Lowell?
A lot less.
And it's the same form of government.
Yeah.
It's a planning form of government. And your former city manager is in Lowell now.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's Lowell and all the way, and I think he did a lot to make the city of Cambridge a better place to live and work, and did a lot to help us
But
grow.
you were saying not a stepping stone. This is-
I see this frankly because, like I said, I've been entrepreneurial my entire career, and the ability to have a platform, some funding, a staff, to go out and support the governor's agenda, and also to drive something forward that I think is a longer-term vision, but is going to help the Commonwealth tremendously compete, not just with other states, but within a globalized economy. That's what excites me. I think the ability you can either collect your paycheck and forge the governor's signature whenever they're out of town, or you can, the sky's the limit. And I really think that when Massachusetts, having been traveling around through the state agency, and having been traveling around now as lieutenant governor, I mean, like in Lowell, we've got one of 3 plastics engineering institutes in the entire world. We have such skill, like immense skill set in precision manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in Holyoke and Springfield, with the highest concentration of biomedical device companies is between Lowell and Worcester. All across the state, we have these incredible skill sets, but they're not. The brains and the bits and the bridges aren't connecting them, right? And so, imagine if we had that precision manufacturing connected with, the wind farms that we're trying to build off the Cape, or the expertise that's been developed there. Imagine if the biomedical devices were better connected with, like MIT. Every time I get so frustrated every time I talk to an entrepreneur coming out of MIT and they're going to scale and they think, well, should I outsource to India or China? Not realizing that we probably have some of the best manufacturing in this state, and by the way, you could drive an hour and be at your plant overseeing operations personally, as opposed to flying halfway around the world, and you probably wouldn't lose your IP.
What was the solar company from Air that went, do we want to talk about that for a second? What was the big solar company in Air that the state gave tax credits for? And then
in Devon's,
At Devon's.
Evergreen.
Evergreen.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Evergreen?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not in favor. So coming from the venture capital world, I'm not particularly in favor of the state trying to pick winners and losers. I think that the private market does that, and you're risking not the public's money, you're risking private individuals' money. But what I think the state can do is provide a platform. So if our goal is to try and get more renewables onto the grid, if our goal is to try and promote clean technology, imagine if we had a platform where any entrepreneur who has an idea for how they could put renewables onto the grid had an ability to plug in, get some rate, and then feed that, over the aggregate, increase the amount of renewables that are part of our electricity mix, but at the same time, prove out their model so that when they try to go to scale, or when they try to sell to some other place where they have to have a proven business model, they've already gotten the proof of concept done. I think the platforms are the kinds of things that the state should really be playing in, and not trying to pick specific winners and losers. So
You just want to lay the groundwork and let somebody, let them spend their money and get it ready.
yeah.
Because that Evergreen was a bit of a mess,
Yeah.
as it were. Just as
Well, and then you could put on the line too, there's been a whole bunch of other companies that they've given tax credits to
Yeah.
that haven't panned out.
I think Massachusetts is never going to be a state that's going to compete based on attracting companies based on tax credits. We're never going to be a state that competes based on trying to attract, based on low skilled labor that is we're paying a barely living wage, minimum wage, that big companies can come in and exploit. The way that we've competed in the past and the way that we're going to compete in the future is based on the knowledge that we have, the skill sets of our people, the ability to come here and have higher productivity workers than anywhere else. That is how Massachusetts is going to compete in my mind. And the only way that we're going to get there is if we are willing to invest in education, in the infrastructure that connects us, and in making sure that we're focusing on job creation across the entire Commonwealth, because we have skill sets across the entire Commonwealth. And I'll give an analogy I like to give is that, because that is obviously going to require investment and that requires sacrifice, but if your neighbor paints and improves their house, your home value goes up. It's the same thing with the Commonwealth. If we're willing to invest in each other, we're all going to benefit. I think that, and my focus, so a lot of people have been running around for the last year, 2 years, 3 years more, running for this office. I only announced in February, which is why, it's tremendous. We've built a fantastic team. We've been at the top of the polls, and we've been, leading. We've been near the top in terms of fundraising. We're still playing a bit of catch up, but we started later than everyone else does. But given that we only started in February, I think we're doing a fantastic job. The reason that I started late is because I have an 8-month-old daughter at home, and so while other people were running around, I was holding my wife's hand through labor, trying not to faint, and then trying to figure out how to put on diapers. And my wife will tell you I'm still perfecting that skill, and every time the size changes, it's like I have to start all over again.
You'll get used to it.
But that's why I started late, but that's why I need more help, I think, than anybody else does. But that's why I also have I have a longer term perspective. I'm not thinking just about myself. I'm thinking about the Commonwealth that my daughter's going to grow up into and the kind of opportunities that she's going to have. And I understand now what my father felt, not when he moved here, because a lot of people move here to go to school, but then they move back. What kept my father here was the opportunity and the idea that he could provide better opportunities for his kids. And I think it's the responsibility that every parent feels to try and make sure that your kid has even better opportunities than you did. And I feel that now with my daughter, and that's the kind of perspective that I'm bringing to the office.
I just want to just back up for a minute. Your comment on tax credits I thought was interesting, and just kind of along those same lines. How do you feel about all these trade missions that he's making? He's come under some fire for those trade missions,
yeah.
And I've often wondered, even before he came under fire for those, what are the tangible results of a trade mission to wherever? How do you feel about all the trade missions? Do you think that's a way to build an economy?
So I didn't come prepared with a list, but so the board that I'm on has actually.
What is that board, by the way?
Massachusetts Technology Collaborative.
Okay.
But it's like wordy, so if I say that, then people don't understand what I'm saying.
I got you. Go ahead. I got you.
But we've actually been the ones to approve some of the joint ventures that have come out of those trade missions.
Okay.
And I think that they have been worthwhile. A lot of times the people that are going on them are paying their own way. They're just organizing the meetings and providing the opportunities for people to connect, and letting either the private sector and I think I've also, it was a trip funded through school, through the Eisenhower Fellowships, to Germany and Switzerland. Switzerland has a city named Basel that's very similar to Cambridge in terms of 200,000 people, a lot of the same companies. But what was fascinating was if we'd spoken to them before we did we had some of the dealings that we had with our biotech companies, we probably would have put some different things on the table. But now we're doing teleconferences with them, video conferences with them. So I think that they are valuable. I understand, there's always a criticism, but the reality is that we play in a global marketplace, and Boston has traditionally not been thought of as the go-to place, and part of that has been the fact that it's harder to get here. So now, for the first time ever, we have direct flights to Asia because of the new Dreamliner, which can land and take off on the shorter runway. So the opportunity to get investments from companies and get plants from companies in China here, whereas before they would have to fly to New York and then risk, I don't know if you've ever been stuck in a 12-hour delay in JFK. I have, but fly directly here and be at their plant. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to recognize the fact that we play in a global economy, that we have skills and people and labor that the rest of the world wants to get access to and wants to create jobs for. And so I think it's it depends on how it's like everything in life, the devil's in the details. It depends on how you use it. You can either go and just gallivant and have fun, or you can try and set up meetings and try to bring back investments. But I know that the governor has brought back investments that have been worthwhile and created jobs for people here in the Commonwealth from these missions. So
Terrific, thanks.
And you're walking into a job right now, hopefully, that
By the way-
you don't know who your dance partner is by now. So.
can I get some water, by the way? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, Kim, I'll get it, you just said it. Jesus. Sorry about that, guys. I'll right back.
But, you may have to, at some point when you're elected, work with a candidate you don't always agree with on the issues.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be a good lieutenant. How do you do that? How do you stand up for, and you said, carry the ball for something you might not believe in?
Yeah. Well, I'm friendly with all the candidates for governor. I think they all have their own expertise and backgrounds which qualify them for the job in different ways. I've worked with several of them before. I've gone to school with some of them. I've gone to school with some of their kids. I'm confident, but they're all talking about this need to think about how do we expand the innovation economy and create jobs throughout the state, and how do we make it just not just about Boston and Cambridge. And some people have started echoing the comments that I've made since I got into the race. So I'm confident that no matter who is the governor, I'll be a great partner for them, because none of them have that same experience that I have at the local level, understanding how the decisions made on Beacon Hill impact cities and towns across the Commonwealth. And none of them have that same kind of experience that I have, working in the private sector, in the innovation economy, working with the governor, expanding it throughout the state, working in Cambridge, trying to make sure that it benefits everyone in the community. So I'm confident that no matter who the gubernatorial nominee is, and assuming it's a Democrat next year, that they'll want to use my skill set and want to be able to use what I bring to the table in that specific way. So, I haven't heard anything come out of. I haven't heard any of them say anything where I'm like, oh my God, that's so wrong. So I think it's a good hypothetical question. But the reality is, I work. Thank you.
Yep.
You mentioned Bob Healy. Bob Healy and I had our disagreements, and he was the chief executive of the city. And you couldn't just snap your fingers and make something happen. You had to convince him in the arguments, and you had to think about what would convince him as to why what I was proposing was the right thing to do, and work with him and make sure you're taking into concern his considerations. But he's a reasonable person. I think all of our governor's candidates are reasonable people. If something were to come up, I would have that discussion with them. And I'm hopeful that if we focus on the objective that we're trying to achieve, which so far from everything I've heard we all agree on, that we'll be able to come up with a consensus about how to proceed. So.
And you have a lot of great ideas. How do you pay for it all?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What do you not do?
So, I think that the same. I think Cambridge has a model, thanks to the city manager, which you loaned us over the last 30 some odd years. But if you go back like 40 years ago, Cambridge was a failing gateway city. We were losing manufacturing. The poverty rates were through the roof. We were having a ton of problems with crime. The way that we've managed to, and everyone just thinks, oh, well, you have MIT and Harvard, and that's why you're successful. But other cities have Yale. Other cities have, Oakland has a ton of issues, even though Berkeley is right next door. Like a lot of other places have universities, have engineering talent popping out of them, and haven't been successful. So I don't think you can just say that, oh, it's MIT and Harvard, even though that's the easy explanation. The more difficult, nuanced explanation is that 35 years ago, we made some decisions, and Bob Healy was at the center of many of these, to focus on economic growth and managing that over time. So it's not like you just pop it in all at once. But over time, you're bringing in new companies, you're partnering. We partnered with MIT to redevelop some land where we then installed biotechs, and now has grown into the Cambridge Innovation Center, the highest concentration of startups in the world. That didn't just happen. That happened because we made a decision. We're going to focus on managing our economic growth. And every year, people don't know this. Cambridge has some of the best services, social services, of any city in the Commonwealth. We provide so much for our residents. If you go to school and you're going to sports, you don't have to pay for any of your sports equipment. It's all paid for by the city. But we also have the lowest tax rate of any big city in the Commonwealth, right? And we're not running a deficit. We're not doing 2.5 overrides. We have a surplus of $120 million. How did that happen? Because we're focused on managing economic growth, and so the growth in our tax base is coming from in reinvesting in the community, reinvesting in our workforce, reinvesting in our kids and our students, and that's attracting companies, and that's creating the growth. And so when new companies start, they are adding to the tax rolls, and that's what's been paying for the increases in the services that we want to do. And I think that's a model that the Commonwealth as a whole has the potential to do, but it's only if, like I said, we're willing to double down on the investments and continue on the path that Governor Patrick has led us on. And if we go backwards, there's a lot of people that are already, across the Commonwealth that are out of jobs because their jobs have been outsourced. That's recent, and the skill gap between where they are since they were put out of work, and what the highest performers, highest productivity members in the world are, is very small. And with a little bit of workforce training, by bringing in our companies to help us do some, help us tailor education at community colleges, by bringing our community colleges into the high school, by working with community colleges to do workforce training, we can eliminate that gap. But if we don't invest, we'll just fall farther behind, and then the hurdle to overcome, I think, is much larger.
How do you break down that wall, though? Because one of the things I've heard a lot in the last month is you've got all these silos in government where you've got higher ed over here. You really don't have, in a meaningful way, the universities working with the community colleges. You don't have the community colleges working with high schools.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks ago, Secretary of Labor Caprillion was in, and she was talking about exactly this issue. Where it's just nobody's talking at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
You might have some one-off where Middlesex might be dealing with Shawshing Tech, but it's not anything that's got a broad. How do you break down those walls, and how do you get people on board with that?
Yeah. So I mean that's been part of the frustration is I can't bring the community college into our high school to start doing, for example, remedial classes, so the kids aren't going to the community college, getting $40,000 in debt based on remedial classes and then dropping out with nothing but debt. We can't bring them in to start doing voc tech training for students that feel like college isn't for them, but there's still potential to get on the path to not just a job but a career. And because the reason is because they're outside the scope of my political boundary. But that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. Exactly, you just mentioned that no one's talking about that at the state level, but that's what I want to be talking about at the state level. And I think I'm going to be hammering that home at every opportunity I get. Going to be traveling around across the state and trying to bring that message home. I'm going to be meeting with I'm with CEOs in Cambridge, and some of them we've started to bring into our high schools. I think that's a model, but it's different in every city because every city has different kind of expertise, has different companies that have different skill sets that they need. But I think that those partnerships, and I'm able to go into companies and get them on board because I'm not just like a politician coming in who doesn't understand. I'm probably the only person in this race who knows how to code. I have an engineering degree from Stanford. I was physics and economics undergrad. I was in the private sector and in venture capital. I can speak the language, but I can also understand. That allows me to communicate to them the importance of if they're going to continue to grow their business, and not have to make drastic changes where it's being taken out from under them and moved somewhere else. That we need to be reinvesting in our workforce pipeline.
Some people would say with your background, you're gonna be wasting all your
We hit on that a
talents
little bit.
because of the status quo mentality
Yeah.
of government, as we can see with certain scandals in several departments, and including the website that doesn't work, because there is, now maybe your expertise will help out in those areas, because obviously we don't know how to run our own computer systems. But I just wanna say, what made you, motivated you
Oh, yeah.
to get involved and,
Yeah.
and even run for lieutenant governor?
It was-
I mean, usually they start, some people start at, state rep, state senator,
Yeah.
but,
That was the first thing we I guess.
Okay.
I'm happy
I see
to.
you were late.
well,
Yeah.
then.
I'm happy to say it again.
No, that's fine, I'll take a little
You
bit.
can read the expert coverage later
Yes,
on.
yes. But, okay, well, where do you stand on the casino repeal question?
Yeah.
That's a good
If it gets on the ballot, okay, would you vote for it, would you vote against it?
Yeah. So you don't want me to answer the previous question you asked?
No, I'm fine with the, I don't want to repeat.
Yeah. So the casinos, I have 3 issues. First of all, I think that the amount of revenue that the legislature anticipated would be there is not going to materialize. We've already heard on NPR and on the news about the other states building casinos along our border to compete with the casinos they're anticipating that we're going to be building in Massachusetts. So I don't think the revenue is going to come in the same way. Second issue I have is that of all the bidders that we have right now at the table who are talking about building casinos, none of them are based here in Massachusetts. They are all owned elsewhere. So where do the profits go? Not Massachusetts. We're not retaining those profits. It's not like, with I guess Mohegan Sun, I guess they're based in Connecticut, right?
Mohegan Sun.
Yeah. So it's not like all the ownership is there and the profits are staying there and helping those communities there. Profits from the casinos we're talking about are going to be leaving the state. Thirdly, I understand the desire to have rapid injection of development money, to build some new things, But I think, again, we were talking about this earlier, I think there's lots of things we could build. We could be improving our roads and bridges. We could be building high-speed rail. We could be building more incubation centers. We could be building buildings for community colleges to come in and work with local employers and provide training for students and kids and adult learners and everyone who's trying to just get to the next stage in their career. There's so many things we could build. So the idea that this is the only thing we can build, I just don't buy. So I think there's lots of things we can invest in. I'm worried about where the money's going to go. I'm worried that the money that we're thinking that was going to be there is not going to be there. And lastly, I'll say, as the only ethnic minority on any ballot for any statewide office this year, as an Asian American, knowing that Asian Americans have a higher propensity for gambling addiction than any other minority, than any other group of people, I'm really worried that casinos wind up preying on those of us who have who can least afford to go be visiting them, and that I think was going to cause the potential to cause negative ramifications on the communities surrounding them. So I think those are my concerns that I have. This is a little bit all out of my hands.
But you open
But now answer the question.
Yeah.
So should it be on the ballot?
Yeah, I mean, I think the SJC is going to decide that. There's a reason why we have separation of courts. We'll follow whatever ruling that they come up with.
But you think it should be on the ballot?
Yeah, I think give people the opportunity to decide, but I'm not the one deciding
Right.
whether or not we give people the opportunity to decide.
But none of us are, but we all
Yeah.
have opinions.
Yeah.
You would vote against it if it makes the ballot.
Yes,
No,
but for the reasons I said
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah, you were
yeah,
articulating.
I mean, you have a lot of legitimate reasons for being opposed to casinos, but at the same time, what do you say about a community, a gateway community like Springfield, that, they voted for casinos.
Mhm.
They're looking upon that as an economic engine to provide them with jobs, at least jobs to
Mhm.
pay for their families and put food on the table and stuff. So that is an economically depressed area,
Mhm.
and I don't see anything going there in the near future. And for all the talk and all the junkets that the
Yeah.
governor has made and prior governors have made, nothing has really come to Springfield. Things have left Springfield.
Yep.
Why not have a casino in
Yeah.
Springfield?
So it's probably my earlier, I think part of what I was talking about earlier was thinking about job. The reason I'm running for lieutenant governor is I think we need to have job creation throughout the state. You know, we can't just be Cambridge and Boston, because frankly, you know, Cambridge can't even fit all the startups that are coming out of Cambridge. But so if we're going to grow as a Commonwealth, where is that growth going to come from? Are we going to have, you know, are we going to get to 10x GDP, 10x not gross domestic product, gross state product, based on growth from just Boston and Cambridge? It's impossible. We can't fit all the people. We can't fit all the industry. It's going to come from places like our gateway cities. So we need to be thinking about investing across the Commonwealth, and that's how, as a state, we're going to grow. And in Springfield, I was just this past 4 days ago, I was at a one of the incubators they built, and this private individual was building an incubator. I think this is a great model for us as a state. He was building an incubator, and he had on one floor, and another floor he had a nonprofit where he went out to local employers, and he said, you know, what do you need? What kind of positions are you trying to fill? And so they gave him a list. And he said, well, if I give you somebody that checks off all these check boxes, will you hire them? And they said, yes. Then he went to the community colleges and got them to come in and are teaching classes to people to get them into those jobs. But then that's just one example. And I think if we're as a state, you know, it's not casinos are not investing in the long-term, they're not a long-term investment in our people. What is a long-term investment in our people is the workforce training, investing in our schools, investing in the connection between Springfield and the rest of the state. There's a lot of skill sets there in terms of manufacturing, precision manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. Investing in those, investing in the skill sets of the people that were recently laid off, and I think that is what's going to attract companies back here, because right now the gap is small enough that we can fund it. If we wait, the gap only becomes bigger, right? And I think the casinos are they're like a wait option, because we're not investing in, you know, the manufacturing skill sets of the people there. And I think that's what creates jobs, and that's what creates economic vitality, and that's what's going to attract not just casinos, but more companies there. And then we also have this casino discussion. You know, people are talking about casinos, but then what is that going to do to, you know, the local mom and pop shops and local restaurateurs and the local, you know, pubs and, you know, a lot of times people go to the casino and they go in, and then everything's inside there for them, and they don't come back out, and so that depresses the area around it. I worry, you know, has that discussion been had? So I think that there's lots of, I don't know that we necessarily gave people the alternative vision of what we could be investing in, and I don't think the governor laid out a plan that said, well, this is what we could be building in Springfield. Let's go. I think investing in people, investing in the infrastructure to connect it back to. In Springfield, frankly, is even closer to two other state capitals than it is to Boston. But investing in that knowledge corridor, investing in the connections there, and then finally investing in, you know, the basics of what's going to bring the innovation economy out there. Because like I said, we were talking earlier, so often when I'm talking to MIT entrepreneurs and they're going to scale, they're thinking about like going to China or India to go to outsource to do mass production, not realizing they could drive. Springfield's only an hour and a half away. That's somebody's daily commute each way in most other cities. And you could drive an hour and a half and potentially be at your plant overseeing operations, and by the way, not lose your IP. You know, that I think is compelling, but because of this bubble effect that we seem to have around you know, the greater Boston area, it's like people think it's like Boston and Cambridge like everything else, and that's not how we're going to go forward.
Do you hear from people west of the Connecticut River, as I have, that Boston is completely, in the state capital, is disconnected from that part of the state, that they feel ignored, unwanted, and this goes back to your point about being a liaison with local school departments and boards of selectmen and city councils between Beacon Hill and local governments.
Yeah.
Do you hear that when you
I've heard
travel?
that, yes. Yep. And frankly, that's why I think I'm the best advocate for dispelling that notion, because I live in Cambridge. I've been on the Cambridge City Council for the last 5 years, And for me to come out and say, hey, it's not just about us, it's about the entire state, I think it's much more compelling than somebody from the West coming out and saying, hey, it's about the rest of the entire state, because they have a vested interest. It's just like, you know, you know, you know, we hear this a lot of times, the importance of allies in the minority community, right? So in the Asian American community, it's not just the importance of Asians standing up for themselves, it's important of having allies stand up with you. But in the LGBT community, it's not just about LGBT, it's about having allies that will fight for you. And I think that's how a lot of times change happens. That's what, I can go into an example on the Cambridge City Council, but I think that allies are what helps me propel things forward, because then people realize it's not just about that specific group, it's about more than that. It's about a broader group of us that potentially includes me.
Just two quick questions last for me. Could you keep your job in the Cambridge City Council if elected?
No,
You'd have to resign that.
I don't see how you possibly could.
Just talk about the convention for a minute. You've got to get 15%.
Yep.
There are 5 candidates.
4.
Yeah, there's a Republican, right?
No.
No, I thought there were
4
5
no,
candidates?
4 on the Democrat.
For lieutenant governor?
On the Democratic
4.
side,
All right, so just talk about the convention a little bit, and do you think you can get 15%?
Yeah, with your help. Are you delegate?
Now, I'm not a party insider,
Yeah.
and that's a big problem with the convention, but we you know, so you're confident that you can get 15%?
Yeah, I'm confident we can get 15%. It obviously is always up to the voters. I always hate to be overconfident. And the reason I've been the top vote getter in Cambridge for the last 2 cycles. This past time I won by an historic margin.
How many votes did you get? I'm just curious, comparing it to Lowell.
Oh man, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah, it's that's just a curious question.
My mentality is always that I'm way behind and I need to do a lot more work to catch up. Which I think is the same mentality I'll bring to the state, that there's a lot we could be doing that we're not doing currently. But no, like I said, I think that I'm told we're doing fine by the people who are counting these things up, but I always think that we could be doing better. And I think it comes down to, I mean, it's always the will of the voters, but I think that there is the message that I'm talking about is being received well by people. Everywhere I go, every caucus, Democratic Town Committee meeting, Democratic State Committee meeting, people come up to me afterwards and say, I thought I knew who I was voting for until I heard you talk, until I heard what you want to do for the rest of the state, and now I'm with you. And I think that we've been having a lot of that progress over the last few months, but it really comes down, I think, as you mentioned earlier, to resume. I'm the only person with significant experience in the private sector in the innovation economy that we're trying to grow. The only person who has accomplishments you can point to on the city council over the last 5 years relevant to what we're trying to accomplish as a state right now. I'm the only person who's worked with the governor over the last 3 years on making sure we're thinking about job creation throughout the entire state. And I think that experience can be used and is important and can revitalize the role of lieutenant governor to make sure that the lieutenant governor is the person who's out there selling the vision, doing the grassroots work, doing the hard lifting that frankly the governor just doesn't have time to do because he or she, like I said, has a lot of things on their plate to worry about. But the lieutenant governor has the ability to think about the long term. And as a former, somebody who's been an entrepreneur my entire career, that's what I've always done, is think about the long term and where are we going over the long term and what's going to make sense, 5-10 years from now, and be beneficial not just for me but for my daughter. So,
Have the 4 lieutenant governor candidates met in a debate or met in one forum yet?
we've had a forum. Yeah, we've had a forum.
Where was that? Was that
It
in
was in
Suffolk?
No, there was one in Lincoln.
Okay.
But we haven't had like a debate.
Okay, but you'd be willing to take part in
absolutely,
the debate
yeah.
if we sponsored a debate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you can bring the people.
We brought the AG candidates to Lowell on Monday, so.
Yeah, I think that I would love to. It's been hard to get attention in the lieutenant governor's race.
Yeah, well, it is.
You know,
If you drove your car over 100 miles an hour at 5:45 a.m. and hit an immovable object and survived, you'd get a lot of attention. I don't know if that's the attention that you want.
Can I see one of your flyers?
yeah.
But,
Thanks.
We're getting close
Oh.
to wrap up time.
And I should tell you that my flyer, as my website, has my personal cell phone, my personal email at the bottom of it. And I've had my personal cell phone, my personal email on the city council's website ever since I was first elected. That's not going to change. I just ask that people not abuse it. If you keep calling me repeatedly at 3:30 in the morning, my wife will get pissed off, and I will have to block your number. Fortunately, no one's done that. But I believe in being accessible, and you will always have, the voters of Massachusetts will always have a direct line to me. If I'm in a meeting, I might not be able to pick up, but I always call back. I call back every person that gets back to me, that calls me. So
I'm gonna test you later tonight.
yeah, you can call me right now. It's gonna ring this phone right here.
Well, thank you.
But I won't answer it because we're in an interview. So
What part of Cambridge do you live in, Leland?
I live just north of Harvard Square, near Dennehy Park.
Oh, yeah.
If you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a fun place.
The traffic there was miserable yesterday,
We have a lot of traffic problems.
because the
We're working on.
Longfellow Bridge.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we're doing a lot of sewer separation work right now as well. It's all kind of coming to.
That's another comparison to Lowell.
Yeah. It's coming to a head where we're doing like the main streets now. And people always complain like, oh, why are you digging up the street 4 times? Well, you've got to lay down the water pipe, the new water pipe, then the new
Yeah.
sewer pipe,
Yeah.
then you got to go and replace the old one, and somewhere between there, then stars are going to come in and take a look at their pipe. And so it's not like you can just do it all at once, because then the pipes don't connect,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these are the kinds of
It's
things.
about time you're spending that surplus money there.
Are you under consent decree to do that? as
No, we're
Lowell
not.
is?
We're not.
Oh, okay.
We're ahead.
Good. Well, Leland, thank you for coming.
Well,
to
thank
this,
you very much.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you in Lowell again
Yeah,
soon.
thank you.
Yeah,
We'd love to. We'd love to come back. I was just out at M2D2,
Oh, yeah.
visiting there. Was out visiting your Plastics Institute.
You all
we
with the
had-
chancellor?
I did, yeah. Amazing, and like the fact that he brought like the Starbucks on campus because he wanted to make sure that she's trying to keep students interacting with each other, and the labs are just absolutely amazing. You know, like have you guys been over there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
He's done a good job.
Absolutely state of the art, and it was amazing to see. Like I took a picture. There's like it's like a Gloucester Engineering that was come out. It was like a plastics company that came out of Lowell, UMass Lowell, and then moved over to the Cape. Moved over to the coast. But I mean, this is an example of like there's been. I think he said something like there's been more plastics related spinouts that have come out of Lowell than like anywhere else. And it's amazing the machines that they can just spit things out, and they're playing with materials that are like cutting edge and so far beyond what we have in widespread adoption right now. But they're like literally inventing the future, but no one knows about it. You know. I don't know.
Okay, Leland, good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Leland,
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what is it?